The forbidden sector had been silent for 3 millennia till one human ship, flickering like a bad idea on a galactic map, refused to leave. Fleet Admiral Zernovis of the Vokari Empire squinted at the lone dot. Duh, impossible, he scoffed, his 7 nostrils flaring in precise disdain. That sector was purged, cleansed, certified uninhabitable by 16 High Council. Audits and one particularly thorough extermination protocol. The deck officer nodded nervously, his eye stalks trembling. Yes, Supreme Admiral, but the vessel remains. Broadcasting something on an unknown frequency. Zernovis adjusted his ceremonial armor, which made a noise not unlike someone polishing disappointment. Send the standard tritered warning. And ready orbital disintegration cannons. Perhaps they didn't receive our last 1,000 warnings, or the neutron sweep. On board the human ship, the IRS compliance captain, Steve Harlan, sat in a swivel chair that squeaked every time he moved. He liked the squeak. It was annoying. He was annoying, on purpose. Open hailing frequencies, he said to no one in particular. The AI, Debbie sighed. Steve, are you sure? That's the Vokari Empire's flagship. They don't do negotiations. They do genocide. Real scorched earth types. Steve grinned like a man who once weaponized breadsticks. Perfect. Let's send them the gift basket. Within moments, the Vokari fleet received the human transmission. A message unfolded across their command screens in a language so simple, so mockingly direct, it made several bureaucrats faint. Hey there, just doing some long-term orbital people watching. You've got a lovely empire. Be a shame if someone audited it. There was a pause. Not from the humans, from the Vokar. Because embedded in the message was a holographic gif of Steve eating grapes, while making direct eye contact. That was followed by a slow zoom on Earth's last tax accountant holding a flamethrower labeled backlog. Zernovis blinked. Then, quietly, he said, "Return fire." The first plasma burst hit nothing. The second, nothing again. The human ship hadn't moved. It just wasn't there when it got hit. Back on the IRS compliance, Steve was now juggling peaches. So they're shooting already. No small talk. Duh. Welcome, Mats. Rude. Shall I engage evasive protocols? Debbie asked. Nope, Steve replied. Just send them the form. You know the one. On the Vokari bridge, alarms howled. A strange file was downloading across their command consoles, bypassing firewalls like they were wet paper. It was labeled Form 14B. Notice of Galactic Audit Empire-wide misappropriation of resources and crimes against hilarity. A shriek erupted from their legal AI. Zernovis barked. What is happening? The legal AI's voice trembled. They V. Submitted a claim against us. 400,000 documented offenses, including misuse of interstellar traffic laws, excessive flag waving, and repeated violations of humor codes. The fleet erupted in disbelief. But those aren't real laws. Steve's face reappeared on every screen. He was now wearing aviators and petting a squirrel. They are now. Back on Earth, somewhere under a Denny's parking lot, the Galactic Bureau of Comedic Warfare came online. A retired comedian named Uncle Boomer sat down at a massive desk labeled Final Strike Approvals. He cracked his knuckles. The button before him said, Release the bees. Steve's ship adjusted course. A single payload was loaded into the forward launcher. It wasn't a missile, it was a box. Inside that box, perfectly functioning fax machine from 1993. And one instruction, this will self-replac it until you file your taxes. Also, it screams, out. The fax box deployed, warping directly onto Zernovis's flagship. It screamed, and printed copies of itself onto every surface. The Vokari fleet started retreating, but it was too late. The machine was already inside their bureaucracy. It was demanding receipts from wars 1,000 years old. It was auditing the Admiral's personal lunch expenses. Steve stood. Debbie prepped the next package. What's in this one? A VHS copy of Paul Blart, Mall Cop, dubbed in every galactic dialect, forced autoplay. Debbie paused. We really want them to suffer, huh? Steve smirked. I want them to learn. Zernovis fell to his knees as the Vokari High Command screens all turned to static, then to Kevin James, laughing from Earth's command bunker. A grizzled admiral raised a toast. They wanted to play God. He forgot humans invented paperwork. Steve's voice echoed again across the stars. Now official. Now tagged as Empire-level crisis broadcast. We'll stop when your empire is funny. Not a moment sooner, and then... silence, except for the screaming fax. The screaming fax machine had replicated itself across 12 Vokari warships in under 7 minutes. By minute 8, it was appointed acting treasurer of Sector 9 by default because everyone else had either fled, resigned, or was trapped under paperwork, and Steve hadn't even left his chair. The IRS compliance floated casually near the edge of the forbidden sector, sipping reactor power like it was a mojito. Inside, Steve leaned back, arms behind his head, watching the galactic mayhem like it was Sunday morning cartoons. Debbie status update. Debbie's voice was dry as ever. Vokari fleet is in full bureaucratic lockdown. Their flagship has declared insolvency. Also, 6 more ships just filed for ... bankruptcy. Delicious, Steve said, popping a Pringle. Then the retaliation came. From hyperspace, a second Vokari fleet dropped in sleeker ships, darker armor, and angry enough to still use fax-proof shields. This wasn't a patrol squad. This was the Inquisition Armada, the Empire's elite force reserved for existential threats and bad Yelp reviews. The lead ship broadcast instantly. A 4-eyed Vokari, polished like a taxidermy narcissist, appeared. I am Sub-Executor Valtrax. You have committed acts of psychological warfare, mimetic violation, and he sniffed disrespect. We are not your accountants. We are your doom. Steve squinted. He just say mimetic violation? Heated Debbie confirmed. Steve leaned into the camera. Sorry, Valtrax. I can't hear you over the sound of your mother's empire burning. Valtrax didn't blink. You dare, Debbie, Steve interrupted. Deploy the geese. A pause. You mean the projectiles, right? Nope. Out from the underside of the IRS compliance, a bay opened. 6 containers launched toward the Inquisition Armada. Inside each one, genetically enhanced Earth geese armed with microthrusters, honed aggression, and 0 flight discipline. They hissed, honked, they rammed. On board Valtrax's command ship, chaos unfolded. Why are they targeting the life support panels? They're pecking through our hull. Sir, they laid eggs in the reactor room, and they're sitting on them? Valtrax staggered. Extermination drones? They're nesting in the drone bay. The human broadcast flickered on again. Steve had donned a cape. Why? Unknown. It didn't matter. You thought we'd send missiles? He chuckled. We sent Canada's revenge. Valtrax screamed, firing everything. The sky lit with plasma and ion cannon bursts. The IRS compliance didn't dodge. It shimmered, then split. 1 ship became 4. No 6-8. Dozens of identical human ships blinked into existence surrounding the Vokari. Holograms, drones, real. The Empire didn't know, and every time they fired, they hit the wrong one. Steve drank tea calmly as his image flickered from ship to ship. You see, we installed the Schrödinger engine. Each of our ships might be the real one, or none, or all. Valtrax roared. That's illegal physics, Steve just winked. Meanwhile, across the Vokari fleet, a new phenomenon began. Random human objects started appearing. A vending machine, karaoke machine belting "Never Gonna Give You Up" in Vokari opera. Duh. An inflatable, bouncy castle labeled Galactic Courtroom. Every alien who touched one was instantly registered for mandatory cross-species arbitration training. Valtrax's first officer, whose name was essentially a coughing noise, cried out, Sir, the humans. They're fighting with bureaucracy, memes, and poultry. We're not equipped. Valtrax's teeth vibrated. Then call in the Caxry swarm. Tell them to wipe this system clean. No survivors. No traces. But the transmission didn't send. Instead, it played a human voice over the command speakers. Hi there. You've reached the human interstellar complaint line. Your galactic purge request is very important to us. Please hold then. Elevator music. Then Steve again. Wearing sunglasses and holding a flaming sword labeled metaphorical. Look, he said calmly. You sent your best. Your worst. Your weirdest. You sent bureaucracy. We sent chaos. You sent fear. We sent Steve. In the background, Earth's musical response team began a coordinated assault. They launched 80s music videos via quantum signal across all known frequencies. For the first time in history, the Vokari heard Eye of the Tiger, and they froze. Some dropped weapons. Others just started dancing. Voltrak screamed as his fleet fell, apart morale breaking, ships malfunctioning under goose attacks, forms piling up from spontaneous audits, and alien officers defecting just to understand the beat. Steve stood, finally, the chaos behind him blooming like fireworks on tax day. "Debbie," he said. "Yes, prep the resonator. You're serious?" Steve smiled. "It's time we show them why you don't poke Earth, especially not before coffee." The humans hadn't just turned the tide. They were preparing something worse, something final. And far across the galaxy, the Empire's High Council began to tremble. The resonator came online with a sound that could only be described as a microwave being bullied by a synthwave DJ. On board the IRS compliance, the lights dimmed. Steve stood in front of a console labeled simply, "Do not press unless it's really funny." He pressed it. Instantly, a low-frequency pulse echoed across space. Not a weapon, but a vibe. Something intangible, yet devastating. Something designed not to kill, but to ruin dignity permanently. And it worked. Every Vokari ship across 1,000 light-years suddenly and inexplicably changed color from imperial obsidian to neon flamingo. Holographic gold chains appeared on every hull. And worse so, much worse, Ship began broadcasting karaoke performances of its own captain. Auto-tuned and out of sync. The Inquisition Armada collapsed inwards, not from damage, but from sheer humiliation. Back in the Vokari High Command Citadel, Emperor Thalzl stood frozen. Once the unshakable ruler of 1 billion systems, he now stared in mute horror at his golden throne room's walls, all of which now displayed Steve doing finger guns in slow motion while surrounded by tax forms and baby goats. "Who is this human?" Thalzl hissed. A junior advisor trembled. "Calls himself Steve." Another added, "And sir, he just trademarked your name." Thalzl recoiled. "What?" Certificate appeared beside him, stamped and sealed. "Property of Steve's Intergalactic Petty Vengeance LLC." Even worse, Earth had filed the trademark through the Galactic Council of Trade. Disputes the one organization the Empire hadn't managed to corrupt. Thalzl snarled. "Launch the contingency protocol. Deploy the Mind Wipe Array." "Yes, my Emperor." And so the Empire activated its most feared weapon, a psychic cascade designed to erase enemy thought patterns across entire species. It had worked against the shriveling horde, the Yulnari Singularity, and one particularly annoying ska band. The beam fired. It reached Earth in moments, and then stopped. Not blocked, not deflected, absorbed. Inside the IRS compliance, the resonator pulsed again. Debbie blinked. "Steve, I tried to mind wipe Earth." "Yup, but the resonator converted it into a TikTok dance." Of course it did. The wave of raw psychic aggression reversed direction, now amplified with bass drops and questionable hashtags. It hit the Empire's fleet like a cultural missile. Half the crews dropped weapons. The other half started ironically flossing. On the Vokari capital, chaos broke out. Sir morale is collapsing. There, laughing at memes. Someone opened a food truck in the middle of the Hall of Supreme Edicts. Thalzl turned to his generals. "How did this happen?" "We had numbers, power, legacy." The ceiling exploded. And Steve descended, in a hoodie, sipping iced coffee. "Hey there," he said cheerfully. "Sorry for the entrance. You guys had like a whole vibe going. Shame about that." Thalzl roared, firing a plasma bolt directly at him. Steve sidestepped it with the grace of someone trying to avoid a pigeon in a parking lot. "Debbie, give the Emperor his final warning." Her voice echoed like a courtroom with Wi-Fi. "Per galactic clause for 20B, you are hereby notified of a total reputational foreclosure. Empire to be seized, dignity not included." The Emperor lunged, but Steve was already behind him, holding a scroll. "This is your Empire's tax return," Steve said, unrolling it. It hit the ground and kept going. 3,000 years, no receipts. "You even claimed divine authority as a deductible." Thalzl SI twitched. "What do you want?" Steve looked around at the crumbling legacy, the imploding command. The once feared galactic symbol now hosting food trucks and meme battles, Then he grinned. I want a public apology. The room fell silent. What? A public, on camera, sincere apology for underestimating Earth, for calling us primitive, for bombing Kansas. And Steve added, pointing to a nearby Vocari general, for calling our cheese disgusting dairy rocks. The general lowered his head in shame. Thouzel sputtered. We are the Vocari. Don't apologize. Don't beg. You will, Steve said, adjusting his sunglasses. 'Cause if you don't, we'll send Karen. Behind him, a portal opened. Out stepped a human woman with a layered haircut, a clipboard, and infinite rage. The very concept of customer service trembled. Kira narrowed her eyes. Who's your supervisor? The Emperor fell to his knees. The broadcast went live across the galaxy. In perfect clarity, the Emperor of the Vocari looked into the camera and said, We ... apologize. To Earth, to humans. To their unpredictable insanity, we ... surrender. Galactic silence followed. Then Earth's response. Fireworks, kazoo horns, and one final audio drop. This broadcast was brought to you by Steve's Galactic Solutions. We fix what you bomb. Back on the IRS compliance, Debbie asked, So what now? Steve leaned back. Now we send MAA bill. Far above the galaxy, a new warning appeared in every stellar database. Caution, do not provoke humanity. They will win, and it will be embarrassing. And somewhere, deep in the Vocari ruins, a small sign flickered into existence. Earth was here. LOL. But it wasn't over yet. Because Steve still had one more broadcast to make, and the galaxy wasn't ready for the mic drop. The moment the Vocari Emperor muttered, We surrender, the galaxy held its breath. Then Steve unmuted himself. Standing aboard the IRS compliance, now orbiting directly over the ruined Vocari capital, he adjusted his hoodie, cracked his neck, and leaned toward the camera. His voice came smooth, casual, devastating. Cool, now strip. There was confusion on the Vocari command bridge. Strip what? Thouzel asked, already half broken. Steve grinned. Your titles, your uniforms, your statues, your entire empire's branding. I want it all gone. Publicly, globally, loudly. Before the Emperor could protest, Debbie triggered Protocol Clown Car. Across the stars, every monument to the Vocari Empire, every statue, mural, coin, and credit note was overwritten. The replacement. A hologram of Steve giving 2 thumbs up, wearing a foam cheese hat with the caption, You tried. Earth won. Empire-wide identity collapse took under 40 seconds. On planet Zarkal 3, an elite Vocari general watched his colossal war memorial transform into a 200-foot inflatable Steve, gently wobbling in the wind. On the moon of Kravis 9, an ancient prophecy wall, one etched with millennia of conquests, was replaced with a QR code that linked to a Vine compilation of cats knocking over glasses. Steve hadn't just defeated the Empire, he'd rebranded it. Thouzel stared in horror. You've erased our legacy. Steve took a long sip of his iced coffee. Correction. We've archived it. On MySpace. At that moment, the true death knell rang out. Earth's final move. The broadcast went system-wide. Steve stood on a digital stage, wearing a robe made entirely of discontinued Vocari flags. Behind him, a screen showing a rapidly updating graph titled Galactic Trust Index, Vocari Empire, plummeting. He looked dead into the camera. Hi, Steve here. You may remember me from completely destroying your empire with geese, memes, and paperwork, but I'm not here to glow. Toke. Maybe just a little. The camera zoomed. I want to speak directly to the rest of the galaxy, to the alliances, federations, unions, coalitions, especially to the species who thought Earth was funny but irrelevant. He held up a form. Form 88R, Post-Victory Galactic Redistribution Notice. We don't want your planets. We don't want your tribute. We don't even want your weapons. He tossed the form into the air. We want your respect. And failing that, we want your Wi-Fi passwords. In the background, Debbie played a soundbite, a deep, booming ohath. Like a high school lunchroom after a verbal roasting, Steve took one step forward. Here's the new law of the galaxy. You mess with Earth? We won't just fight back. We'll do it weird. We'll weaponize your pride, hack your flags, audit your empire, and leave a Yelp review so savage it echoes through space-time. He raised a single finger. And don't think this is over. Behind him, a massive LED screen powered up, displayed one thing. Next target, whichever species laughs first. The galaxy froze. Even the Slorpians who laughed telepathically through their teeth shut up instantly. Then Steve leaned into the mic for the final line. We're Earth. We're ridiculous, unpredictable, and we're just getting started. He dropped the mic. It hit the floor of the command deck with a reverb so powerful it physically cracked the Vokari Emperor's toenails. In the silence that followed, a new star was named. It wasn't a star at all. It was just Steve's ship, still parked in the Forbidden Sector, still glowing softly with the radioactive energy of pure, unfiltered chaos. Across the galaxy, one message burned itself into databanks' minds, stone alike. Never provoke a species that invented flaming hot Cheetos and tax evasion in the same century. Somewhere, deep in a forgotten archive, a wise old AI whispered, humanity. A species so absurd even war had to laugh. And the galaxy, battered and rebranded, finally understood the one universal truth. Never start a war with Earth, because they'll end it. And then they'll meme about it.